So this isn't just something that, okay, I'll teach you a technique and you can kind of carbon copy, cookie cutter it on each client and all of the work looks the same. So I want to help unlock, when it comes to blonding, for you to be able to look at something and say, this is exactly what I need to do. Because I'm going to show you all of these different techniques, when to use them, how to use them, and how to break it down in your mind. We are going over the internal dialogue as it relates to how to apply whatever technique it is that you choose or that you create specifically for that client. So when we talk about the difference between balayage and foilyage and what makes them both so perfect when they're married together, when they stand alone, and on different clients, there's gonna be so many different things you look at. It's because I want most of the lift out of the hair, and maybe there is a timing issue. So maybe if you have a timing issue, that client needs to get in and out of the chair really fast, right? There's all of these different things. You're gonna start considering, what technique do I use? So once you decided what your technique is gonna be, then you're gonna talk about sectioning internally in your head. Does her hair flow more forward here, or is it parted in the middle and just kind of comes off to the side or flows back? So what is being exposed? So sometimes I'll even start, if I want something that goes from brighter to gradually a little bit darker, I'll start in that area where I want the most brightness. But I'm gonna show you some different examples of what these different placements might look like, who are these different clients, and how we can apply these. So that is all going to work together to create the technique, that unique technique for that specific client sitting in that chair. The crown is its own thing because it's kind of like, most clients have a whirl or a calic somewhere in this part of their head. So if it's, right here, over here, off-centered, but essentially the crown, when you hold your comb, if I'm putting her perfectly to the side, and you hold your comb on her head backwards, it's where your comb lifts off here. Now the bottom of the crown, it's a little bit harder sometimes for people to fully understand, but if I'm holding her hair tight against her head this way. Now the crown is extremely important because usually you're not placing your most brightest everything in the crown coming over top of the hair unless all of their hair is like parted forward. But most of the looks that you see right now and that I think are really important to mention have most depth at the crown. So sometimes when I'm doing highlights on a client, I'll be working from my area of most depth to my area of most brightness. So the whole hairline in the back coming out from underneath, that money pop, and I might be able to get away with balayage in the crown. So to put a huge chunk of blonde coming right here that you're just gonna have to melt away later just really doesn't make a ton of sense. So the bones of the structure, we're already placing in kind of what we wanna see at the bowl, that end result, as we're working through our technique. A lot of that is some just like really fancy placement for, I want this to be in the side and then go through the back. So, or I want that star shape to have some irregularity to that section, but it's covering the crown and encroaches upon the top, the side, and the underneath. So you can see how you can get really, really creative with the shape that you like, but it really comes down to the effect that you want it to have on the head in the end. So you can choose all the different shapes and puzzle pieces you want throughout the entire head as long as you understand the functionality. Sometimes I'll hold the ends of the hair right here and allow some of those layers to lift off and know that all of this can have depth because I'll still be able to see some of that brightness through the ends right there. If I do a diagonal back section here and a diagonal back section here from the top of the ear to the occipital, all of this area is considered the interior. So we have the crown, kind of the interior, and then we have what I would consider a really fat hairline section. But I think it's so important to notice the difference between all of them. And just like in those side sections, knowing that you could actually apply a little bit more depth in here if you really want that hairline to pop. If you're working with longer hair, or if you're working with a bob, if it is a bob and it's a one-length bob, this is all pretty easy. So you could use, of course, a halo section and create a halo here, a halo here, and then your crown. Of course, you can create a zigzag pattern. So reiterating again, this could be a diamond shape. It could be smaller based on their hair and what you want to see. So I'm able to get a little creative with some of those formulations as long as I stay within like the different areas of the head that it makes sense. Where I decided to start in the back to get the bolder burst of blonde coming from the underneath, especially because that's where she needed more lift right here. So when we're talking about pickup, for her, I knew that her hair was already, you know, she wanted to be blonde, and then as well as the front, wanting that area of most brightness, detailing out her hairline, but see how immediately after the front, I applied depth. But if I'm gradually going from something brighter to darker, then it's gonna be packing in the foils and then like gradually getting a little bit further away from the scalp and taking a little bit less pickup in the opposite effect. And that's where you're gonna have to use your creative freedom to think about, is this like more of the watercolor situation? So now the two that I showed you, yes, I talked about maybe you could do the bigger pickup and foils and things like that. So you could do changing your balayage placement and your pickup depending on the looks that you want to create. But either way, this is like a total transformation, like color correction scenario for somebody, and all done with foils. So this is 100% the bones of the technique, right? Of just basically pretty much the lightener. Then we have like your foliage placement, and now we're gonna talk about kind of marrying the two together. So I was able to go in through her fringe and do something that is like a little bit of a heavier pickup because her hair is all worn forward. So she has some highlights going on underneath, and then this heavy pickup is actually balayage within that interior layer. You can use your foliage, you can do your baby lights through where you want the area of most depth is where I decided to do them. This is a pixie bob rather, so it's kind of that like in between of pixie bob or a mini bob. And she wanted lots of brightness around her face, but something that would give that kind of sunset effect. But I did the hairline detailing technique, and then I slowly worked my way into more depth within my foil. There's no color added, so the bones of the structure are there, and you could literally just glaze her and be done, which is brilliant. You have the side, the back, and then breaking down the back further, you have everything below the occipital and everything from the occipital to the bottom of the crown. So that would be kind of the bottom part of the back of the head, the interior, which is on that exterior, the interior of the hair, what spills over top, what comes from the crown, and what falls forward from the fringe. So you could use this, and I use this exact sectioning as my base, especially for color corrections, for any haircut. I use this exact sectioning. But had I cut her first, thought through the sectioning, I could have come up with a completely different kind of effect for her rather than just straightforward highlights. So if you're balayaging, but you would still want to consider the top and what falls over, if you want to work that horizontally, or if you did just want to work these big moon sections where you're just doing halo, halo, halo. So there's those three areas to consider: the exterior, interior, and then the crown, and then broken down into top, back, side. If I take my pickup here horizontally, I could place in just a few foils and you'll see exactly what I picked up. So vertically, I'm gonna see less. Horizontally, I'm gonna see a big sheet of color coming down, and diagonally, I'm gonna see movement going every which way and looking a little bit soft. So what we just talked about, is it a baby light? Am I placing it vertically, horizontally, or diagonally? Or is it a heavier pickup? Marrying all of those things together, your painting patterns with your baby lights and heavy weave pickups, and where you're putting that on the head is going to be entirely up to you and how you choose to execute that look.